The massive cargo hauler Stellar Wanderer groaned as it docked at Kepler Station, its hull scarred from months of deep space travel. Among the usual mix of traders, miners, and drifters who disembarked, one figure stood out for all the wrong reasons. Marcus Chun stepped onto the station's main deck with nothing but a worn tool bag slung over his shoulder and grease still under his fingernails. At barely average height for a human and built more for endurance than intimidation, Marcus looked completely unremarkable. His clothes were practical work gear, his hair was perpetually messy from crawling through engine compartments, and his only distinguishing feature was the quiet confidence in his dark eyes. He was exactly the kind of person most beings on this frontier station would overlook entirely, which was fine by Marcus. He preferred it that way. Kepler Station served as a crucial trading hub for 3 different star systems, and its population reflected that diversity. Towering Altarians with their crystalline skin structures conducted business alongside sleek vegan traders, while the reptilian Drachmary handled most of the station's security contracts. But it was the Lupari who truly ran things here. The wolf-like Lupari had claimed this sector of space generations ago, and their pack-based society had adapted surprisingly well to interstellar commerce. Their keen senses, natural teamwork, and fierce loyalty made them excellent partners in business and formidable enemies in conflict. Most other species had learned to respect the Lupari's territorial instincts and hierarchical nature. Marcus had heard about their culture during his journey here, but experiencing it firsthand was something else entirely. As he made his way through the station's corridors, he noticed how other beings automatically stepped aside when Lupari approached. The wolf people moved with a fluid grace that spoke of predators barely contained by civilization, and their amber eyes missed nothing. The human had come to Kepler Station for one simple reason: work. His last job had ended badly when his employer decided that humans were too unpredictable for sensitive engineering tasks. It was an old prejudice Marcus had faced throughout his career. Humans were seen as emotional, reckless, and unreliable compared to the more civilized species. Never mind that human engineering had solved countless problems that other species had given up on as impossible. Marcus found his way to the employment district, where various guilds and corporations maintained offices. The mechanical engineering postings were dominated by established firms that preferred their own kind. Altarian crystal tech companies only hired other Altarians. Vegan precision manufacturing outfits stuck to their own species. The few integrated companies made it clear they preferred stable candidates with extensive references. After hours of polite rejections, Marcus was ready to book passage on the next freighter out when he noticed a posting that made him pause. Fenris Industrial was looking for a senior mechanical engineer, and, unlike the others, their requirements focused entirely on technical competence. No species preferences were listed, and the pay was surprisingly generous. The address led him to one of the station's premium business sectors, where Fenris Industrial occupied an entire floor. The lobby was impressive, but not ostentatious, with clean lines and displays showcasing various engineering projects. What caught Marcus's attention immediately was that every employee he could see was Lupari. The receptionist, a lean female with silver-streaked fur, looked up as he approached. Her amber eyes studied him with the kind of intensity that suggested she could determine his entire life history from his scent. "I'm here about the engineering position," Marcus said, maintaining eye contact despite the predatory weight of her gaze. "Mr. Chun," she asked, consulting her terminal. "You have an appointment with Alpha Fenris. Please wait." The use of Alpha instead of a corporate title told Marcus everything he needed to know about how this company operated. He'd heard about Lupari pack structures, but had never worked within one. The idea was both intriguing and slightly intimidating. While he waited, Marcus observed the subtle dynamics playing out around him. Junior employees showed clear deference to their seniors, but it wasn't the rigid hierarchy he'd seen in military organizations. This was more organic, based on competence and earned respect rather than arbitrary rank. When disagreements arose during discussions he could overhear, they were settled quickly and decisively, but without the political maneuvering common in human corporations. "The Alpha will see you now," the receptionist announced, gesturing toward a corridor lined with awards and project photos. The office at the end was larger than expected, but still felt personal rather than imposing. Behind an impressive desk sat a Lupari who radiated authority even while perfectly still. Alpha Fenris was clearly in his prime, with dark fur marked by strategic streaks of silver and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail about Marcus in seconds. "Mr. Chun," the Alpha said, his voice carrying the slight growl common to his species. "Your credentials are unusual. Human engineering education, but you've worked on Drachmary fusion systems and Altarian crystal matrices. Most specialists stick to their own technology. Engineering problems don't care about species boundaries," Marcus replied. "Good solutions work regardless of who designed the original system." Something that might have been amusement flickered in the Alpha's eyes. "Indeed. Tell me about the vegan orbital platform incident." Marcus had wondered if that would come up. The incident had made him notorious in some circles and unemployable in others. The platform was losing structural integrity due to harmonic resonance in the support columns. The vegan engineers insisted it was impossible because their calculations showed the resonance frequency was outside the range of normal operations. "But," Fenris prompted, "but they hadn't accounted for the interaction between their artificial gravity generators and the planet's magnetic field. The combination created a feedback loop that amplified specific frequencies. I redesigned the dampening system to compensate, but by then, the platform had already suffered significant damage." The official report blamed human error and reckless modifications to approved systems, Fenris noted. Marcus shrugged. "The platform is still in operation 5 years later with my modifications in place. Results speak for themselves." "Yes," the Alpha said slowly, "they do. What do you know about Lupari engineering philosophy? Pack-based problem solving, multiple perspectives, rapid iteration, and strong leadership to make final decisions. More adaptive than traditional hierarchies, but more decisive than committee-based approaches." Fenris leaned back in his chair. "You've done your research, but understanding pack dynamics intellectually and functioning within them are very different things. Lupari engineers can be protective of their territory." "I've worked with territorial species before," Marcus said. "The key is proving your value without challenging the existing structure. Competence earns respect, but respect has to be demonstrated, not assumed." Wise words. The Alpha was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus with an intensity that felt like being scanned by high-resolution sensors. "This position involves working on frontier mining equipment. Harsh conditions, equipment failure can mean death, and our clients don't tolerate delays. The engineer we're replacing made a critical error that cost lives." "What kind of error?" "He prioritized elegant solutions over robust ones. Beautiful engineering that failed when miners needed it most." Fenris's eyes hardened. "We can't afford such luxuries in our line of work." Marcus nodded. "Elegant engineering that gets people killed isn't elegant. It's just expensive failure." "Exactly." The Alpha stood, his full height impressive even by Lupari standards. "You understand the work and seem to grasp our culture. But there's one more consideration, which is my daughter works in the engineering department. She's brilliant, dedicated, and the heir to this company. She's also of an age where many young males consider her an attractive prospect for pack bonding." Marcus kept his expression carefully neutral. He was beginning to understand where this conversation was heading. "Every male who joins our engineering team inevitably tries to court her," Fenris continued. "This creates complications. Distraction, competition, politics. It interferes with the work." "I see," Marcus said carefully. "I don't think you do, not entirely." The Alpha's voice carried a subtle warning. "Lupari pack dynamics around mating are intense. When multiple males compete for the same female, it can tear a pack apart. I've had to terminate several promising engineers because their pursuit of Kira compromised their judgment and effectiveness. And you're wondering if I'll be another problem, Marcus concluded. I'm wondering if you understand what you'd be walking into. Kira is strong-willed, intelligent, and beautiful by any species standards. The males in the department are already competing with each other. Adding another variable to that equation could be explosive. Marcus considered his response carefully. Alpha Fenris, I'm here because I need work and because your company appears to value competence over politics. If your daughter is as skilled as you claim, I look forward to working with her as a colleague. If she's not, her parentage won't protect her from honest professional criticism. The Alpha's ears twitched forward slightly. You're not intimidated by pack politics? I'm intimidated by bad engineering, Marcus replied. Everything else is just workplace drama. Fenris moved to the window overlooking the engineering department. Come here. Marcus joined him, looking down at a bustling workspace where dozens of Lupari worked on various projects. The space was organized but energetic, with teams forming and reforming around different tasks as needed. It was clearly a highly functional environment. There, Fenris said, pointing to a workstation near the center of the room. Marcus followed his gaze and felt his breath catch slightly. The female Lupari at the indicated station was indeed striking, even by the standards of her naturally impressive species. Her silver fur was marked with distinctive black patterns, and she moved with the confident grace of someone completely comfortable in her environment. She was currently explaining something to a group of junior engineers, her gestures precise and animated. That's Kira, Fenris said. As you can see, she commands attention. Even as they watched, Marcus could see the truth of the Alpha's words. 3 different male engineers found excuses to approach her workstation, and their body language made their intentions obvious. The tension between them was visible even from this distance. The brown-furred male is Garrett, my senior project manager, Fenris continued. Excellent engineer, but he's been distracted ever since he decided Kira would make an ideal mate. The gray one is Pavel, newer but very talented. He and Garrett have been competing for months now. The third is Marcus. Yes, same name as you. He's been here longest, but lacks the courage to make his intentions clear. And Kira? Marcus asked. Shows no interest in any of them, which only intensifies their efforts. The Alpha side. I've tried everything short of forbidding workplace relationships, which would be both impractical and contrary to pack nature. Lupari form strong bonds through shared challenges and close cooperation. Trying to prevent that would be like trying to stop water from flowing downhill. Marcus watched as one of the males brought Kira something that might have been food or a small gift. She accepted it politely but without enthusiasm, then immediately returned to her work. The disappointed suitor retreated, but Marcus could see the tension in his posture. What exactly are you asking me? Marcus said. I'm asking if you can work in that environment without adding to the chaos, Fenris replied. And I'm telling you that if you can't, this position isn't for you, regardless of your engineering qualifications. Marcus was quiet for several minutes, watching the dynamics below. It was clear that all 3 males were skilled professionals, but their competing interests were creating an undercurrent of tension that had to be affecting the entire department. Kira seemed to be handling it with professional grace, but the situation was clearly unsustainable. Alpha Fenris, Marcus said finally, I've worked in challenging environments before. I can maintain professional relationships and focus on the work. If you're willing to judge me on my engineering performance rather than assumptions about human behavior, I'd like the position. The Alpha studied him for a long moment. Very well, but understand this. The first sign that you're contributing to the problem rather than solving it, and you're gone. Pack harmony is more important than any individual member, no matter how skilled. Understood. Good. Fenris moved back to his desk. You start tomorrow. Report to Kira directly. She's the lead engineer on our current major project. As Marcus left the office, he reflected on what he'd gotten himself into. He thought finding work would be his biggest challenge on Kepler Station. Instead, he was walking into a situation where three powerful predators were competing for the same prize, and he would be working directly with the object of their competition. It was going to be an interesting assignment. The next morning, Marcus arrived early to familiarize himself with the department layout and review the technical specifications for the current project. Fenris Industrial specialized in mining equipment designed for extreme environments, and their current contract involved developing systems capable of operating in the crushing gravity and corrosive atmosphere of a newly discovered mineral-rich world. He was studying the specifications when footsteps approached his assigned workstation. He looked up to see Kira herself, holding 2 cups of what smelled like coffee. Up close, she was even more impressive than she'd appeared from Fenris's office window. Her silver and black fur was perfectly groomed, her amber eyes were sharp with intelligence, and she carried herself with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. "You must be the new human engineer," she said, offering him one of the cups. "I'm Kia Finleys. Welcome to the team." "Marcus Chun," he replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Thank you for the welcome. Father mentioned you have experience with fusion systems and crystal matrices. That's exactly what we need for the Xerion project." She gestured toward a large holographic display showing a complex mining platform. "We're trying to develop equipment that can operate in a 3.2G environment with atmospheric acid concentrations that would dissolve most standard materials within hours." Marcus studied the display, immediately noticing several potential issues with the current design. The support structure calculations assume standard gravity. In 3.2G, those stress points will fail within days. "Exactly what I told the design committee last week," Kira said with satisfaction. "They insisted the additional bracing would be too expensive and reduce efficiency." "Better expensive than lethal," Marcus observed. "What about the atmospheric sealing? Those joints won't hold against corrosive penetration." "Another point I've been arguing. The senior engineers think I'm being overcautious." She paused, studying his face. "You see the problems immediately. Most engineers focus on making the system work and worry about failure modes later." "Failure modes are what get people killed," Marcus said simply. "You can't engineer your way out of physics." For the first time since he'd arrived, Kira smiled. It was a predator smile, full of teeth and satisfaction. "I think we're going to work well together, Marcus Chun." As if summoned by her words, footsteps approached from multiple directions. Marcus looked up to see 3 male Lupari converging on their location, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. "Kira," said the brown-furred one Fenris had identified as Garrett, "I didn't expect you in this early. I brought those revised calculations you requested, and I finished the stress analysis from yesterday," added Pavel, the gray-furred engineer. The third male, who shared Marcus's name, simply positioned himself where he could observe the interaction while pretending to work on his own project. Marcus could feel the tension immediately. All 3 males were using the pretense of work to approach Kira, but their real attention was focused on him as the unknown variable in their competition. He was being evaluated as both a potential rival and a threat to the delicate balance they'd established. Garrett, Pavel, Kira acknowledged them professionally. "This is Marcus Chun, our new senior engineer. He'll be taking lead on the environmental systems for Xerion." "Environmental systems?" Garrett's tone suggested he didn't approve of giving such a critical assignment to a newcomer. "That's one of our most challenging aspects. Perhaps he should start with something simpler while he learns our procedures." "I agree," Pavel added smoothly. "No offense to Mr. Chun, but Lupari engineering methods are quite different from human approaches. It would be prudent to ensure compatibility before assigning critical responsibilities." Marcus recognized the challenge for what it was. Both males were asserting dominance while maintaining plausible professional cover. They were testing whether he would back down or stand his ground. "That's a reasonable concern," Marcus said calmly. "What specific differences should I be aware of?" "Well," Garrett began, clearly not expecting the question to be turned back on him, "we emphasize pack coordination and consensus building. Human engineering tends to be more individualistic." "I see." And how does that apply to environmental sealing in a 3.2G corrosive atmosphere? Pavel jumped in. The point is that our approach requires extensive collaboration and trust. Those relationships take time to develop. Of course, Marcus agreed. Kira, would you prefer I work independently until I've proven my reliability, or would you rather integrate me into existing teams immediately? The question put Kira in the position of making the decision, effectively removing Garrett and Pavel from the authority loop. Marcus had acknowledged their concerns, while making it clear that he reported to Kira, not them. Integration is more efficient, Kira said after a moment. Pavel, I want you and Marcus to review the atmospheric sealing specifications together. Garrett, you and Marcus should verify the stress calculations for the new support structure. We can't afford mistakes on either system. Both males nodded professionally, but Marcus could see they weren't entirely pleased with the arrangement. By pairing him with each of them, Kira had made it impossible for them to exclude him without openly defying her authority. At the same time, she'd given them both opportunities to evaluate his capabilities directly. Excellent, Marcus said. I'll review the current specifications and get back to both of you with questions by this afternoon. As the two Lupri engineers departed, Marcus noticed that the third one was still observing from his workstation. Their eyes met briefly, and Marcus nodded politely before returning to his review of the project materials. That was smoothly handled, Kira observed once they were alone again. Just trying to establish working relationships, Marcus replied. Though I get the feeling this isn't really about engineering competence. Kira's ears flattened slightly. You're perceptive. Father warned you about the situation, I assume. He mentioned there might be some complications related to pack dynamics. That's a diplomatic way to put it. She sighed. Garrett and Pavel are both skilled engineers and good pack members, but their competition for my attention has been affecting their judgment and disrupting team cohesion. And the third one, Marcus Wolfhart. He's been here longest, but lacks the confidence to make his intentions clear. He mostly just watches and waits for opportunities that never come. Marcus glanced toward the other human named Lupri. Complicated situation. More than you know, Kira said quietly. Lupri mating bonds are for life. Once formed, they're unbreakable. That makes the selection process intense. Every male who shows interest is essentially proposing a permanent partnership that will affect not just our personal lives, but our professional relationship and our roles in the pack. No pressure at all, Marcus observed dryly. Exactly. And the longer I go without choosing, the more persistent and creative their efforts become. She gestured toward her workstation, where Marcus now noticed several small gifts and tokens arranged carefully around her equipment. Garrett brings me rare metals and crystal samples. Pavel composes technical poetry about engineering solutions. Marcus Wolfhart leaves perfectly organized tool arrangements and scheduling optimizations. Marcus tried to imagine technical poetry and failed. How do you handle it? Professionally and politely, while hoping they eventually lose interest. Kira's expression suggested this hope was increasingly futile. But their competition is starting to affect the whole department. Other engineers are choosing sides. Project assignments are being influenced by personal loyalties, and everyone's walking on eggshells to avoid triggering confrontations. Your father mentioned something similar. Father's been remarkably patient, but his tolerance isn't infinite. If the situation doesn't resolve itself soon, he'll have to make changes that none of us want. Marcus understood the implication. Alpha Fenris would eventually have to transfer or terminate some of his best engineers to preserve pack harmony. It was a lose-lose situation for everyone involved. Well, Marcus said, I'll do my best to stay focused on the engineering challenges and avoid complicating the situation further. Kira studied him with those penetrating amber eyes. You're different from what I expected. How so? Most humans I've met are either intimidated by Lupri pack dynamics or completely oblivious to them. You seem to understand them without being overwhelmed by them. I've learned that every species has complex social structures, Marcus replied. The key is respecting them without letting them paralyze you. Wise approach. Kira stood, her movement fluid and precise. I have a design review meeting in 10 minutes. Feel free to ask questions as you review the project materials. We'll talk more this afternoon. As she walked away, Marcus noticed that multiple pairs of eyes followed her progress across the department. The three competing males tracked her movement with obvious interest, but even engineers who weren't directly involved seemed attuned to her presence. She was clearly not just the Alpha's daughter, but a significant figure in her own right. Marcus turned back to the project specifications, determined to understand every aspect of a Xerian mining platform before his first meetings with Garrett and Pavel. If he was going to work in this environment successfully, he needed to prove his value quickly and decisively. The specifications made for fascinating reading. The planet Xerion had been discovered 6 months ago during a routine survey mission, and initial analysis had revealed mineral deposits worth trillions of credits. Unfortunately, the planet's extreme conditions made standard mining operations impossible. The 3.2 G gravity field was manageable with proper equipment, but the atmospheric composition was the real challenge. Xerion's atmosphere contained sulfuric acid concentrations that would dissolve most metals within hours, along with trace elements that interfered with electronic systems and exotic compounds that had never been encountered before. Previous attempts to establish mining operations on similar worlds had failed catastrophically, with equipment failure rates approaching 100%. Fenris Industrial's contract called for developing a complete mining platform capable of operating in Xerion's environment for at least 6 standard months while extracting specified quantities of rare minerals. The financial penalties for failure were severe, but the potential profits were enormous. As Marcus studied the environmental data, he began to see why Kira had been arguing for more robust design approaches. The current specifications pushed several systems dangerously close to their theoretical limits, leaving no margin for error or unexpected conditions. In an environment where equipment failure meant certain death for anyone caught outside protective shelters, such optimistic engineering was essentially criminal negligence. The atmospheric sealing systems were particularly concerning. The proposed gaskets and joints relied on exotic materials that had never been tested in Xerion's specific atmospheric composition. The designers had extrapolated from laboratory tests with similar compounds, but Marcus had seen too many real-world failures caused by seemingly insignificant differences between laboratory and field conditions. The structural calculations were equally problematic. The support framework had been designed to withstand 3.2 G gravity loads, but the calculations assumed uniform stress distribution and ideal material properties. In practice, manufacturing tolerances, installation variations, and thermal cycling would introduce stress concentrations that could lead to catastrophic failure. Marcus was deep in thermal analysis calculations when someone cleared their throat behind him. He looked up to see Pavel standing nearby, holding a datapad and wearing an expression of polite professionalism that didn't quite hide his curiosity. Mr. Chun, Pavel said, Kira asked us to review the atmospheric sealing specifications together. When would be convenient for you? Now works fine, Marcus replied, saving his work and turning to face the Lupari engineer. I've been reviewing the current designs, and I have some concerns. Oh, Pavel's ears perked forward slightly. What kind of concerns? The gasket materials haven't been tested in the actual atmospheric composition. We're extrapolating from laboratory simulations, but Xerion's atmosphere contains compounds we've never encountered before. Even small interactions could compromise sealing integrity. Pavel nodded slowly. I raised similar concerns during the initial design phase, but the committee concluded that extensive field testing would be too expensive and time-consuming. More expensive than losing the entire mining platform? Marcus asked. That was my argument as well. Pavel's expression warmed slightly. Perhaps you could review my alternative proposals? I think you might find them interesting. For the next hour, Marcus found himself genuinely impressed with Pavel's engineering capabilities. The Lupri engineer had identified most of the same potential failure modes Marcus had spotted, and his proposed solutions were both elegant and practical. More importantly, Pavel approached engineering challenges with the kind of systematic thinking that Marcus respected. "These are excellent alternatives," Marcus said finally. "Why weren't they implemented?" "Politics," Pavel said with obvious frustration. "The senior committee members have been working on similar systems for years, and they don't appreciate suggestions that their approaches might be inadequate." "But Kira agrees with your assessment?" "She does, but she's been cautious about pushing too hard against established authority. Father expects her to demonstrate leadership, but challenging senior engineers too aggressively could be seen as disrespectful to pack hierarchy." Marcus was beginning to understand the delicate balance Kira had to maintain. As the Alpha's daughter and heir apparent, she needed to prove her capabilities while respecting the experience and status of senior pack members. Too much deference would make her seem weak and unprepared for leadership. Too much assertiveness would be seen as arrogant disregard for pack wisdom. "What about Garrett's perspective on structural modifications?" Marcus asked. Pavel's expression tightened slightly. "Garrett is conservative in his approach. He prefers proven solutions over innovative ones. That's not necessarily a bad thing in critical applications." "True," Pavel agreed reluctantly. "But sometimes proven solutions aren't adequate for unprecedented challenges." Marcus sensed undercurrents in Pavel's comments that went beyond pure engineering disagreement. The competition between Pavel and Garrett for Kira's attention was clearly influencing their professional relationship, even when they were trying to maintain objectivity. "Would you mind if I reviewed Garrett's structural analysis before our meeting?" Marcus asked. "I'd prefer to understand both perspectives before offering opinions." "Of course," Pavel said, though Marcus detected a slight disappointment in his tone. "His calculations are quite thorough, even if I disagree with some of his underlying assumptions." After Pavel left, Marcus spent another hour reviewing Garrett's structural analysis. Like Pavel's ceiling proposals, the work was professionally competent and demonstrated deep expertise. Garrett had identified potential stress concentration points that the original designers had overlooked, and his proposed reinforcements would significantly improve the platform's structural integrity. The problem was that neither engineer's proposals had been fully integrated with the others. Pavel's ceiling modifications would require structural changes that hadn't been accounted for in Garrett's calculations. Garrett's reinforcements would create new challenges for atmospheric sealing that Pavel's designs didn't address. Both approaches were sound individually, but they hadn't been developed as components of a unified system. Marcus was beginning to see how personal competition was affecting professional performance. Both engineers were focused on proving their individual brilliance rather than collaborating on optimal solutions. Their rivalry was preventing the kind of integrated thinking that complex engineering challenges required. His meeting with Garrett confirmed this impression. The Brownford Lupri was clearly skilled and experienced, but he approached their discussion as a test of Marcus's competence rather than a collaborative problem-solving session. Every question felt like a challenge, and every suggestion was met with detailed explanations of why established approaches were superior. "The human tendency toward innovative solutions is well documented," Garrett observed at one point, "but innovation for its own sake can be dangerous in critical applications. Lupri engineering emphasizes proven reliability over theoretical optimization." "I agree that reliability is paramount," Marcus replied. "But sometimes proven approaches aren't adequate for unprecedented challenges. The question is how to achieve necessary innovation while maintaining acceptable risk levels." "An interesting perspective," Garrett said, though his tone suggested he found it more concerning than interesting. "How would you propose balancing those considerations?" Marcus had been thinking about this question since his conversation with Pavel. Integrated system design with multiple failure redundancies. Instead of optimizing individual components in isolation, design the entire system to degrade gracefully when individual elements fail. Elaborate. Pavel's sealing approach is excellent, but it assumes the gaskets will perform as specified. Your structural modifications are sound, but they assume the support materials will maintain their properties throughout the mission duration. What if we design the system to function acceptably even when both assumptions prove partially incorrect? Garrett's ears tilted forward with genuine interest. Continue. Multiple sealing layers with different material properties, so atmospheric penetration is slowed even if the primary seals fail. Structural redundancy designed around stress distribution rather than absolute strength, so localized failures don't cascade into complete collapse. Environmental monitoring systems that provide early warning of degradation trends. That would require extensive system integration and significantly increase complexity. Yes, Marcus agreed, but it would also provide the kind of reliability margins that Xerian's environment demands. Simple solutions might be elegant, but they're not necessarily robust. For the first time since their conversation began, Garrett seemed to be considering Marcus as a colleague rather than an obstacle. You're suggesting a fundamental change in design philosophy. I'm suggesting we match our design philosophy to the operational requirements. Xerian isn't a standard environment where standard approaches will work. Garrett was quiet for several minutes, studying Marcus with the same intensity his alpha had shown the previous day. Your approach would require close collaboration between multiple engineering disciplines. That's true. Lupari pack dynamics are well suited to such collaboration, but it requires trust and mutual respect among team members. Marcus recognized another test when he heard one. I'm here to contribute to successful mission outcomes. Personal ego and territorial disputes serve no one's interests when lives are at stake. Wise words, Garrett said slowly, but wisdom is easier to express than to practice. Agreed. Judge me by my actions, not my words. As Garrett departed, Marcus reflected on the complex dynamics he was navigating. Both Pavel and Garrett were skilled professionals whose personal competition was preventing optimal collaboration. Kira was caught between demonstrating leadership and maintaining pack harmony. Alpha Fenris was watching the situation carefully, ready to make difficult decisions if performance suffered. And Marcus was the unknown variable who could either help resolve the situation or make it significantly worse. He was still considering these challenges when his workstation chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as M. Wolfhart, and the message was brief. Welcome to the team. Would you like to join me for dinner tonight? Nothing formal. Just thought you might appreciate a friendly conversation after your first day. Marcus stared at the message for several minutes. The third member of Kira's admirers was making contact, and his approach was characteristically indirect. No specific agenda, no obvious professional pretext, just a simple offer of companionship. It was either the most innocent gesture Marcus had received since arriving on Kepler Station, or the most sophisticated manipulation. Given what he'd learned about Lupari pack dynamics, he suspected it might be both. He typed back a simple acceptance. Whatever Marcus Wolfhart's intentions, it would be an opportunity to better understand the social landscape he was working within. And after a day of careful navigation through professional and personal minefields, a straightforward conversation sounded remarkably appealing. The observation deck on Kepler Station's rim offered a spectacular view of the surrounding star system, with 3 different suns casting complex patterns of light and shadow across the facility's rotating sections. Marcus found Marcus Wolfhart waiting for him at a small table near the viewport, 2 meals already ordered, and a bottle of something that glowed faintly blue in the artificial lighting. Mr. Chun, Wolfhart said, rising as Marcus approached. Thank you for joining me. I thought you might enjoy the view. Up close, the Lupari engineer was smaller than his competitors for Kira's attention, built more for endurance than intimidation. His fur was a deep brown marked with copper highlights, and his amber eyes held an intelligence that seemed constantly analyzing and evaluating. When he moved, it was with careful precision rather than the fluid confidence Marcus had observed in Garrett and Pavel. Please, just Marcus, the human said, taking the offered seat. And thank you for the invitation. It's been an interesting first day. I imagine so. Wolfheart poured the glowing liquid into 2 glasses. Kepler Station can be overwhelming for newcomers, especially humans. The social dynamics take time to understand. Marcus accepted the drink cautiously. What is this? Altarian crystal wine. Mild alcohol content, but it helps with the stress of adapting to new pack structures. Wolfheart raised his glass in what Marcus assumed was a toast. To successful integration. The wine tasted like starlight and copper, with an effervescence that seemed to continue long after swallowing. Marcus felt tension he hadn't realized he was carrying begin to ease from his shoulders. You've been at Fenris Industrial longer than Pavel or Garrett, Marcus observed. 5 standard years, Wolfheart confirmed. I started as a junior systems analyst and worked my way up to senior environmental engineer. It's been educational, and you've watched the competition for Kira's attention develop over that time. Wolfheart's ears twitched slightly. You're direct. Most humans try to approach loopery social situations more obliquely. Direct questions get clear answers. Oblique approaches just create more confusion. Fair enough. Wolfheart took a sip of his wine. Yes, I've watched it develop. Pavel arrived 18 months ago, full of innovative ideas and supreme confidence. Garrett transferred from the Military Engineering Division 2 years ago, bringing extensive experience and a preference for proven solutions. Both are exceptional engineers and natural leaders. But their competition has created complications that affect the entire department. Projects that should be collaborative efforts become opportunities to demonstrate superior competence. Resource allocation discussions turn into subtle challenges for dominance. Even routine meetings develop undercurrents of territorial assertion. Marcus nodded. And where do you fit into all this? Wolfheart was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars. I'm a senior engineer who lacks the confidence to compete directly with more assertive personalities. I excel at detailed analysis and system optimization, but I'm not a natural leader like Pavel or a proven commander like Garrett. You're interested in Kira yourself. Wolfheart hesitated, then seemed to reach some internal decision. Yes, I find her brilliant, dedicated, and personally appealing. But I'm also realistic about my chances. She needs a mate who can match her strength and complement her leadership style. I'm not that male. The admission was delivered with matter-of-fact resignation rather than self-pity, which somehow made it more poignant. Marcus found himself respecting Wolfheart's honest self-assessment, even while wondering why the Loopery had shared such personal information with a complete stranger. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. Because you're the first potential complication who might actually help resolve the situation rather than make it worse. I'm not sure I follow. Wolfheart leaned forward slightly. Pavel and Garrett are evenly matched competitors. Neither has a clear advantage, which means their rivalry could continue indefinitely. Each success by one is countered by achievements from the other. Each gesture of courtship is matched by equally impressive efforts from his rival. The balance is stable but unproductive, and my arrival changes that how. You represent a completely different category of potential mate. Human Loopery pairings are rare but not unknown, and you bring unique capabilities that neither Pavel nor Garrett can match. If Kira shows interest in you, it would force them to either escalate their competition to destructive levels or accept that they've been pursuing an impossible goal. Marcus set down his glass carefully. That assumes Kira would have any interest in a human mate. Would that surprise you? Wolfheart asked. You've worked with her for 1 day. What's your assessment? Marcus thought about his interactions with Kira. Her quick grasp of engineering principles, her frustration with conservative approaches to unprecedented challenges, her careful navigation of pack politics while maintaining professional authority. She was indeed impressive by any standard. She's brilliant and dedicated, he said finally. But I'm here as an engineer, not a potential mate. Getting involved in personal relationships with colleagues is generally a bad idea, and getting involved in Loopery pack dynamics as an outsider seems particularly unwise. Wise perspective, Wolfhard agreed. But perspective and reality don't always align. Kira has been politely deflecting romantic advances for over 2 years. She's made it clear that professional competence and personal compatibility are both requirements for any serious relationship. Pavel and Garrett meet the competence requirement, but have failed to establish personal compatibility. And you think I might be different because you approach problems differently. Pavel seeks innovative solutions. Garrett emphasizes proven reliability. You integrate both approaches into more robust systems. That synthesis might appeal to someone who's been frustrated by false choices between innovation and reliability. Marcus considered this carefully. Wolfhart's analysis was perceptive, but it also revealed a sophisticated understanding of both engineering philosophy and personal psychology that suggested the quiet Loopery was more formidable than he appeared. You've given this considerable thought, Marcus observed. I analyze systems for a living. People are just more complex systems with less predictable failure modes. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their meals. Marcus had ordered something the menu described as traditional human comfort food, which turned out to be a surprisingly accurate recreation of meatloaf with mashed potatoes. Wolfhart's meal was less identifiable, but smelled rich and savory. How did you end up at Fenris Industrial? Marcus asked as they ate. Pack loyalty, Wolfhart said simply. Alpha Fenris was my pack leader's closest friend. When I showed aptitude for engineering, he offered me an apprenticeship. It was an opportunity one couldn't refuse, even though I suspected I might not fit the traditional leadership profile his organization typically favored. But you succeeded here. I found a niche. Environmental systems analysis requires patience and attention to detail more than charismatic leadership. I'm good at identifying problems that others might miss and developing comprehensive solutions that account for multiple variables. Marcus was beginning to understand why Alpha Fenris kept Wolfhart despite his lack of leadership ambitions. Every organization needed people who could see the big picture and catch critical details that more dynamic personalities might overlook. What's your assessment of the Xerian project? Marcus asked. Wolfhart's expression became more serious. Honestly, I think we're underestimating the challenges. The atmosphere composition data is incomplete. The gravity field measurements were taken from orbital surveys rather than surface observations, and the mineral extraction requirements assume equipment performance that we haven't achieved in controlled laboratory conditions, much less in hostile field environments. But the project is still viable. With the right approach, yes. But it will require engineering solutions that push beyond proven technologies into genuine innovation. That's why Kira has been advocating for more conservative design margins and robust failure redundancies, and why Pavel and Garrett have been struggling to find common ground. Exactly. Pavel wants to develop cutting-edge solutions that maximize efficiency and minimize resource requirements. Garrett wants to modify proven technologies to handle increased stress loads and environmental challenges. Both approaches have merit, but neither alone is adequate for Xerian's conditions. Marcus nodded. Integration is necessary, but their personal competition makes collaboration difficult. More than difficult. Impossible. Each sees the other as an obstacle to overcome rather than a resource to utilize. They're both trying to prove they can succeed without the other's contributions, which ensures that neither will succeed at all, unless something changes the dynamic. Wolfhart met Marcus's eyes directly. You could be that change. Or I could make the situation worse by adding another competitive element. That's possible, Wolfhart admitted, but I don't think likely. You've demonstrated collaborative instincts in your first day that neither Pavel nor Garrett has shown in months of working together. Marcus finished his meal while considering Wolfhart's perspective. The quiet Loopery was clearly more than he appeared, with insights into both technical and social systems that suggested a formidable intelligence hidden behind unassuming mannerisms. More importantly, he seemed genuinely concerned about project success rather than personal advancement. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Of course. Why are you helping me understand all this?" "You're interested in Kira yourself, but you're providing information that might help me compete with you." Wolfheart smiled, and for the first time since they'd met, he looked genuinely relaxed. "Because I've accepted that direct competition isn't my strength. But I excel at system optimization and problem resolution. If I can help create conditions where the best possible outcomes emerge naturally, that serves everyone's interests, including my own, even if the best outcome doesn't include you winning Kira's affection, especially then. Lupri pack bonds are lifetime commitments. If Kira chooses a mate who isn't truly compatible with her needs and goals, it will affect not just her happiness, but the entire pack's stability and effectiveness. My personal disappointment is a small price to pay for avoiding that outcome." Marcus found himself genuinely impressed by Wolfheart's perspective. The Lupri was demonstrating a form of leadership that had nothing to do with dominance or charisma and everything to do with understanding complex systems and optimizing outcomes for everyone involved. "That's a remarkably mature approach," Marcus said. "It's a practical one. I've learned to work with my strengths rather than against my limitations." As they finished their meal, Marcus reflected on everything he'd learned. Wolfheart had provided insights into the technical challenges, personal dynamics, and organizational pressures that would define his experience at Fenris Industrial. More importantly, the quiet engineer had demonstrated an analytical approach to complex social situations that Marcus could both understand and respect. "Thank you for dinner and the conversation," Marcus said as they prepared to leave. "It's been enlightening." "My pleasure." "And Marcus?" Wolfheart paused as they reached the exit. "Whatever develops between you and Kira, I hope you'll remember that the project's success depends on finding ways for all of us to work together effectively." "I'll keep that in mind." The next morning brought Marcus's first full team meeting on the Xerion project. The conference room was larger than expected, with holographic displays capable of rendering three-dimensional technical schematics in impressive detail. Kira had arrived early and was reviewing data streams when Marcus entered, her silver and black fur catching the light from the displays in patterns that seemed almost designed to draw attention. "Good morning, Marcus," she said without looking up from her work. "I hope you found yesterday's individual consultations useful." "Very much so. Both Pavel and Garrett have excellent insights, though their approaches are quite different," diplomatically stated. Kira's tone suggested she was well aware of the tensions between her subordinates. "Today we'll see if they can find common ground when forced to work in the same room." As if summoned by her words, Pavel and Garrett entered together, their body language suggesting they'd been discussing something with barely contained intensity. Both nodded politely to Marcus and Kira, but the air between them crackled with competitive energy. Marcus Wolfheart arrived a few minutes later, carrying an impressive collection of datapads and looking like someone prepared for a long analytical session. He took a seat where he could observe the entire room while remaining slightly apart from the main discussion area. "Gentlemen," Kira began once everyone was seated, "we have 3 weeks to finalize our design specifications for the Xerion mining platform. The client expects preliminary schematics by the end of this month, with complete engineering packages due 60 days later. Failure to meet these deadlines will result in contract cancellation and significant financial penalties." She activated the main holographic display, showing the mining platform in its current proposed configuration. "As you all know, our current design has several critical weaknesses that must be addressed before we can proceed to detailed engineering." Pavel leaned forward. "The atmospheric sealing systems need complete redesign. Laboratory simulations suggest our current materials will fail within weeks of deployment." "Agreed," Garrett said, though his tone suggested he wasn't pleased about agreeing with Pavel. "The structural framework also requires a significant reinforcement to handle extended operations in 3.2G conditions." "Both valid concerns," Kira acknowledged. "Marcus, you've reviewed both sets of proposals. What's your assessment? Marcus activated his own datapad and transferred several files to the main display. Both approaches address critical issues, but they haven't been integrated into a unified system design. Pavel's ceiling modifications require structural changes that Garrett's calculations don't account for. Garrett's reinforcements create new atmosphere penetration points that Pavel's ceiling design doesn't address. Meaning, Kira plumped it. Meaning we need to start over with a systems-level approach rather than trying to optimize individual components in isolation. Pavel's ears flattened slightly. That could take months. We don't have that kind of time. We don't have time to build a system that will fail catastrophically either, Marcus replied. But I'm not suggesting we discard your work. I'm suggesting we use it as the foundation for integrated design. Garrett studied the display Marcus had created. Show us what you mean. For the next hour, Marcus walked them through a design philosophy that treated the mining platform as an interconnected system where every component affected every other component. Instead of optimizing atmospheric sealing in isolation, he proposed treating it as part of a larger environmental control system that included structural integrity, power distribution, thermal management, and redundant safety systems. The key insight, Marcus explained, is that we can't prevent individual component failures in Xerian's environment. What we can do is design the system to continue functioning acceptably when multiple components are operating below specification. Graceful degradation. Wolfhard observed from his position at the edge of the discussion. The system becomes less efficient as conditions worsen, but it doesn't fail catastrophically until absolutely critical thresholds are exceeded. Exactly. Pavel's innovative sealing approach provides our primary defense against atmosphere penetration. Garrett's structural reinforcements ensure the platform can handle gravity loads even when some components are compromised, and additional redundancy layers provide backup capabilities when both primary systems are stressed. Pavel studied the integrated schematics with obvious interest. This would require extensive coordination between structural and environmental teams. That's true, Marcus agreed. But it would also ensure that our individual optimizations don't conflict with each other. Garrett was examining the structural implications of the integrated design. The redundancy requirements would increase complexity and manufacturing costs. Also true. But the alternative is a system optimized for perfect conditions that will fail completely when those conditions don't materialize. Kira had been studying the displays in silence, but now she turned to address the room. This approach would require all of us to work more closely together than we have in the past. Everyone would need to understand how their contributions affect other systems. Is that a problem? Marcus asked. Not a problem, Pavel said slowly, but a significant change in methodology. Change can be good, Garrett admitted reluctantly, if it improves outcomes. Wolfhard cleared his throat from his observation position. There's another consideration. This integrated approach would require strong project coordination to prevent different teams from working at cross purposes. Someone would need to maintain overall system coherence while managing detailed subsystem development. All eyes turned to Kira, who nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. This kind of integration requires leadership that understands all the technical domains while maintaining focus on overall mission objectives. You want to restructure the project management approach? Pavel asked. I want to restructure our engineering approach. The management structure should follow from technical requirements, not the other way around. Marcus could see that they were approaching a critical decision point. The integrated design philosophy he proposed would require not just technical changes, but organizational ones as well. Success would depend on their ability to work as a genuine team rather than a collection of competing individuals. What kind of organizational structure would support integrated systems design? Garrett asked. Kira activated a new display showing a proposed team structure. Small working groups focused on specific subsystems, but with overlapping membership to ensure coordination. Daily integration meetings to identify potential conflicts before they become problems. And shared accountability for overall system performance rather than individual component optimization. Who leads the integration effort? Pavel wanted to know. I do, Kira said firmly. But I'll need technical input from all of you to understand the implications of different design choices. Marcus could see the competitive tension between Pavel and Garrett beginning to shift into something more collaborative. Instead of competing for individual recognition, they were being asked to contribute to a shared challenge that required all their capabilities. I like the approach, Pavel said after several minutes of consideration. But implementing it successfully will require trust and open communication. We'll all need to check our egos and focus on problem solving. Agreed, Garrett said, surprising everyone with his quick acceptance. Military engineering taught me that mission success requires subordinating individual preferences to team objectives. Wolfhart nodded approvingly from his position. The systems analysis supports this approach. Individual optimization creates local maxima that may not serve overall system requirements. Kira looked around the room, measuring the commitment she was seeing. Then, we're agreed. We'll redesign the Xerian platform using integrated systems methodology. Agreed, Pavel said immediately. Agreed, Garrett confirmed. Absolutely, Wolfhard added. All eyes turned to Marcus, who realized that his response would set the tone for everything that followed. I'm in, but success will require all of us to be honest about what we don't know and willing to ask for help when we need it. Fair enough, Kira smiled, and Marcus noticed that it was the first completely relaxed expression he'd seen from her since arriving at Fenris Industrial. Let's get to work. The next 2 weeks transformed the engineering department in ways Marcus hadn't expected. The competitive tension between Pavel and Garrett didn't disappear, but it evolved into something more constructive. Instead of trying to prove superiority over each other, they began competing to contribute most effectively to the integrated design effort. Pavel's innovative instincts flourished when channeled toward solving system-level challenges rather than optimizing isolated components. His proposals for adaptive environmental controls that could respond automatically to changing conditions proved crucial for handling Xerian's unpredictable atmospheric variations. Garrett's systematic approach to reliability engineering became the backbone of their redundancy planning. His experience with military systems provided insights into failure modes that civilian engineers often overlooked, and his methodical testing protocols ensured that their innovations would function under real-world stress conditions. Wolfhart emerged as the project's analytical conscience, constantly checking their integrated designs against system-level requirements and identifying potential conflicts before they became problems. His ability to synthesize complex information from multiple sources made him invaluable for coordinating between different working groups. And Marcus found himself functioning as a bridge between different engineering philosophies, helping Pavel's innovative approaches mesh with Garrett's reliability requirements while ensuring that Wolfhart's system analyses were incorporated into practical design decisions. But it was Kira who truly made the collaboration work. Her leadership style combined technical competence with an intuitive understanding of how to channel competitive personalities toward common goals. She somehow managed to give each engineer opportunities to excel individually while maintaining focus on collective success. Marcus was beginning to understand why Alpha Fenris had confidence in his daughter's ability to lead the company eventually. She possessed not just engineering skills, but the kind of systems thinking that could optimize complex organizations for long-term success. The personal dynamics were evolving as well, though in ways that Marcus found both encouraging and concerning. Pavel and Garrett's romantic competition for Kira continued, but it had become less disruptive to their professional relationship. Working closely together on challenging technical problems had reminded them why they respected each other's capabilities. Unfortunately, their collaboration had also made both engineers more confident about their romantic prospects. Success breeds confidence, and both were interpreting the improved working relationship as evidence that Kira was beginning to appreciate their respective qualities. Marcus found himself caught in an increasingly complex situation. His professional relationship with Kira was excellent, built on mutual respect and shared commitment to engineering excellence. But he was also becoming aware that their personal compatibility extended beyond technical collaboration. Kira was brilliant, dedicated, and possessed a sense of humor that emerged during late-night problem-solving sessions. She approached challenges with a combination of analytical rigor and creative insight that Marcus found both professionally inspiring and personally attractive. More importantly, she seemed to value his contributions not just as an engineer, but as a colleague whose perspective enhanced her own thinking. The problem was that pursuing a personal relationship with Kira would inevitably disrupt the collaborative dynamic they'd worked so hard to establish. Pavel and Garrett had both made their romantic interests clear, and Marcus entering that competition would likely shatter the delicate balance that was making their professional partnership so successful. He was wrestling with these considerations when Wolfhart appeared at his workstation with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that suggested he wanted to discuss something important. "How are you adapting to our integrated design methodology?" Wolfhart asked, settling into a nearby chair. "Better than I expected," Marcus replied honestly. "Everyone's been remarkably willing to share information and coordinate their efforts. Yes, it's been encouraging to watch. Pavel and Garrett are both performing at the top of their capabilities, and the overall design quality is exceeding our original projections." "But," Marcus prompted, sensing there was more to Wolfhart's assessment. "But the improved working relationship has also increased their confidence about romantic prospects. Both believe their professional collaboration with Kira demonstrates personal compatibility." Marcus sipped his coffee carefully. "And you think they're mistaken? I think they're confusing professional respect with romantic interest. Kira values their engineering capabilities and leadership potential, but that doesn't necessarily translate to personal attraction." "How can you be sure?" Wolfhart was quiet for a moment, then seemed to reach some internal decision. "Because I've been observing her interactions with all of us, and her responses to you are qualitatively different from her responses to Pavel or Garrett." "In what way?" "When Pavel proposes innovative solutions, she evaluates them analytically and provides constructive feedback. When Garrett advocates for proven approaches, she considers the reliability implications and suggests improvements. Both interactions demonstrate professional respect and collaborative engagement." "And with me?" "With you, she asks follow-up questions that extend beyond immediate technical requirements. She seeks your opinion on organizational decisions that don't directly involve your expertise. She makes sure you're included in discussions even when your specialization isn't central to the topic being addressed." Marcus considered this carefully. "That could just reflect my status as the newest team member." "It could," Wolfhart agreed. "But I don't think so. I think she finds your perspective valuable in ways that extend beyond engineering competence." "You're suggesting she's personally interested in me." "I'm suggesting the possibility exists. More importantly, I'm suggesting that possibility represents either a significant opportunity or a major threat to everything we've accomplished over the past 2 weeks." Marcus set down his coffee cup. "Explain." "If you and Kira develop a genuine personal relationship based on mutual attraction and compatibility, it could provide the stable foundation that allows the rest of us to move beyond romantic competition and focus entirely on professional collaboration. And if not, if you become another competitor for her attention, or if a relationship develops, but proves incompatible with professional requirements, it could destroy the collaborative dynamic that's making this project successful." Marcus understood the implications. Wolfhart was essentially offering him both encouragement and a warning. The quiet engineer had identified a potential path toward resolving the romantic tensions that had been complicating the department's dynamics. But he was also making it clear that failure would have serious consequences for everyone involved. "What makes you think I might be different from Pavel or Garrett?" Marcus asked. "Several things. First, you're not loopery, which means pack hierarchy considerations don't apply to your relationship with Kira. Second, your approach to engineering emphasizes integration and collaboration rather than individual achievement. Third, you've demonstrated genuine interest in understanding our social dynamics, rather than assuming human approaches are universally applicable. Those seem like professional compatibility factors rather than personal attraction indicators. For most species, those might be separate considerations. For Lupari, and especially for Kira, personal and professional compatibility are closely linked. Pack bonds are built on shared challenges and mutual support, not just emotional attraction. Marcus was beginning to understand something important about Lupari culture. The romantic competition between Pavel and Garrett wasn't just about winning Kira's affection. It was about proving worthiness for a lifetime partnership that would affect not just their personal happiness, but their professional roles and pack standing. You're saying that any successful relationship with Kira would have to integrate personal and professional elements. I'm saying that for Kira specifically, those elements can't be separated. She's not just choosing a romantic partner. She's choosing someone who will share leadership responsibilities for the company and eventually the entire pack. Her mate's professional capabilities and leadership style will directly affect her own effectiveness as Alpha Fenris's heir. The weight of that realization settled on Marcus like a physical burden. Kira wasn't just an attractive and brilliant colleague. She was the designated successor to one of the most successful Lupari business leaders in this sector of space. And her choice of mate would determine not just her personal future, but the future of everyone who depended on Fenris' industrial success. That's a lot of pressure for any relationship, Marcus observed. Yes, but also a lot of potential for someone who can meet those requirements. Wolfheart stood to leave, then paused. Marcus, I don't know if you and Kira are personally compatible, but I do know that you understand systems thinking in ways that could complement her leadership style. If that compatibility exists, pursuing it might serve everyone's interests. If it doesn't exist, recognizing that quickly would also serve everyone's interests. You're suggesting I should explore the possibility. I'm suggesting you should be honest about it, with both yourself and Kira. Uncertainty serves no one's interests, and this situation won't resolve itself through passive waiting. After Wolfheart left, Marcus found himself staring at the Zirian project schematics without really seeing them. The technical challenges were complex, but manageable given their integrated design approach. The personal and professional challenges were proving far more difficult to navigate. He was still considering his options when Kira appeared at his workstation, holding a datapad and wearing an expression that suggested she needed to discuss something important. Marcus, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to get your opinion on something. Of course. She led him to a small conference room away from the main engineering floor, closing the door behind them and activating a privacy screen that would prevent their conversation from being overheard. I need to ask you something, and I need you to give me a completely honest answer, she said without preamble. All right, are you interested in me personally, or just professionally? The directness of the question caught Marcus off guard, but he recognized it as consistent with everything he'd learned about Lupari communication styles. No elaborate social maneuvering, no subtle hints or gradual revelation. Just a straightforward request for information. Both, he said after a moment's consideration. I find you professionally inspiring and personally attractive. But I'm also aware that pursuing personal interest could complicate our professional relationship. And you're concerned about Pavel and Garrett's reactions. Among other things, yes. Kira nodded slowly. I appreciate your honesty. Now I need to share some information with you that might affect your perspective. I'm listening. I've been deflecting romantic advances from Pavel and Garrett for over 2 years, not because I don't respect them professionally, but because neither one represents the kind of partnership I need for the responsibilities I'll eventually inherit. What kind of partnership do you need? Someone who can complement my strengths and compensate for my weaknesses. Someone whose leadership style integrates with mine rather than competing with it. Someone who understands that running a Lupari pack business requires balancing individual achievement with collective success. Marcus waited for her to continue. Pavel is brilliant and innovative, but his approach to leadership emphasizes individual vision over collaborative consensus. Garrett is reliable and experienced, but his military background makes him more comfortable with clear hierarchies than with the fluid dynamics that make pack organizations successful. And you think I might offer something different? I think you understand systems integration in ways that could enhance rather than duplicate my own capabilities. More importantly, I think you approach leadership as optimization of collective performance rather than assertion of individual authority. Marcus realized they were having a conversation about much more than personal attraction. Kira was essentially interviewing him for a role that would define not just their personal relationship, but his place in the entire pack structure. That's a significant responsibility, he said carefully. Yes, too significant to approach casually or to delay indefinitely. Kira met his eyes directly. I'm asking if you're interested in exploring that possibility, understanding that it would mean both personal and professional partnership. Marcus felt as though he was standing at a crossroads that would determine not just his immediate future, but the trajectory of his entire life. The safe choice would be to maintain professional boundaries and avoid the complications that personal involvement would inevitably create. The bold choice would be to embrace possibilities he hadn't even imagined when he'd arrived at Kepler Station looking for work. I'm interested, he said finally, but I want to understand what that means for Pavel and Garrett and for the project we're working on together. It means we'll need to be transparent with them about our intentions and help them understand that their professional contributions remain valued even though the romantic competition is resolved. Will they accept that? They're professionals and pack members. They'll adapt because the alternative is exclusion from the pack, which serves no one's interests. Marcus hoped she was right, but he suspected the transition would be more complicated than she was suggesting. Pavel and Garrett had invested considerable emotional energy in their pursuit of Kira's affection, and learning that a newcomer had succeeded where they had failed would likely trigger responses that went beyond rational professional adjustment. How do you want to handle this? He asked. Carefully and transparently. We'll explore personal compatibility while maintaining professional focus on the Zirian project. If the personal relationship develops successfully, we'll make our intentions clear to the rest of the team. If it doesn't work out, we'll return to purely professional collaboration with minimal disruption. That sounds reasonable in theory, but you're concerned about the practical implementation. I'm concerned about underestimating the emotional stakes involved. Pavel and Garrett aren't just competing for your attention. They're competing for a role that would define their entire future within the pack structure. Kira nodded approvingly. You understand the deeper implications. That's exactly the kind of systems thinking that makes you a potentially suitable partner. No pressure at all, Marcus said dryly. For the first time since their conversation began, Kira smiled. If you were looking for a relationship without pressure or complications, you probably shouldn't have taken a job with a Lupari pack organization. Point taken. Marcus found himself smiling back. So what happens now? Now we go back to work on the Zirian project while paying attention to how we function together on both professional and personal levels. If compatibility develops naturally, we'll pursue it. If not, we'll recognize that quickly and adjust accordingly. And Pavel and Garrett will notice that something has changed and require honest explanation before they draw their own conclusions. Kira moved toward the door, then paused. Marcus, I want you to know that whatever develops between us personally, your professional contributions to this project have been invaluable. You've helped us achieve collaborative dynamics that seemed impossible just 3 weeks ago. It's been a group effort. Yes, but you've been the catalyst that made that group effort possible. Pavel and Garrett are both exceptional engineers, but their competition was preventing them from functioning effectively as colleagues. Your integrated design approach gave them a framework for collaboration that serves their individual strengths while supporting collective goals. Marcus realized that Kira's praise represented more than personal appreciation. As the Alpha's daughter and designated heir, her professional endorsement carried significant weight within the pack hierarchy. She was essentially announcing that he had proven his value as both engineer and pack member. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for helping us remember why we became engineers in the first place." As they returned to the main engineering floor, Marcus noticed that the department's energy level seemed higher than usual. Multiple teams were working intensively on different aspects of the integrated Xerian design, and their collaboration appeared both natural and productive. Pavel and Garrett were consulting with each other on structural environmental interface requirements, their discussion animated but professional. Wolfhart caught Marcus's eye and nodded slightly, as though acknowledging that important decisions had been made and approved of their direction. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus reflected, at least they would face them with clear understanding of the stakes involved and honest communication about their intentions. In his experience, most engineering problems could be solved given sufficient time, resources, and accurate information about system requirements. He was hoping that personal relationships followed similar principles.